Hi, I am Tracy Phillips, and today I'm with Blackbird Writers Presents and talking to Michael Stagg, a legal thriller author. Michael is the author of 7 Nate Shepherd thrillers. He was a civil trial lawyer for more than 25 years. He has tried cases and he has tried cases to juries, so he's won and lost, and he's argued about it in the Court of Appeals afterwards. He was still practicing law when the first Nate Shepherd books were published, so he wrote them under a pen name. Probably a good plan. Welcome, Michael. It's so good to talk to you today.
Thank you, Tracy. It's great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, your books came highly recommended, and boy, I read the first book in the series, and I could not put it down. I
Oh, thank you.
really enjoyed it. And honestly, legal thriller is not usually what I just, jump for,
Sure.
but it was great. I
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. Thank you very much, Tracy. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I mean, mostly like the dialogue is clean, and your descriptions, and even the whole like the court process and everything. I was sucked in and on, in the ride till the finish. It was
Well, thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. I appreciate that.
So, obviously, your previous career as a lawyer has influenced your writing.
Sure.
And you were a civil trial lawyer, not a criminal lawyer, right?
That's right. Yeah. So for people who don't know the difference, I just dealt with disputes between folks that would normally be with money, not anyone going to jail or anything like that. And so that was what I did for most of my career. I was a medical malpractice trial lawyer, so I primarily defended doctors and hospitals in malpractice suits, and that's what I did a lot of. And then we would handle those cases through trial. So yeah, that's where a lot of the case stuff comes in.
Yeah. So were you like wishing you were a criminal lawyer?
No, but I think the general consensus is most people think that's more exciting. So
Yeah.
that's where I went. And also, you were right when in the intro, when I started, I was still practicing, and so I wanted to keep the two things separate. Being a lawyer and being a writer. I didn't want any clients to think, that I was using anything from their cases. And so one easy way to do that is to put it in a totally different venue. So if by putting it in criminal cases, it makes it real easy to show, there's the two aren't crossing, no cross pollination.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's definitely a better read, probably.
I think so. Yeah, I think you can do it with civil cases, but it's harder for sure.
Yeah.
For some
Um,
reason, people always like murder.
yeah. Are there other ways that your personal life has impacted your fiction?
Um, you know, I I think the biggest thing was with being a lawyer, you got used to researching things a lot. Anytime I'd have a medical case, I'd usually be confronted with a condition I didn't know a whole lot about and would have to dive in and learn about it. And the same was true if you have an area of the law you don't know, you have to kind of dive in and learn about it. And so that's part of with each book, you get a sense of what's going to be in play. And so you dive in and just do some research and figure it out. And being a writer, the other part that being a lawyer trains you for is sitting at your desk and writing under a deadline. It's not, the prose isn't the same, but the mindset of you need to get something done was
Yeah.
helpful. So you get used
But in
to.
chair.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. So you get used to that part of it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and then the rest, it's like anything else. We all have little things that creep in from our lives, but those are the big things, I think.
Yeah. Um, so this book is Lethal Defense is the first book in a series of 7 books, right?
That's right. The 7th is not out yet. That'll be out in the fall, but there are 6 that are currently out.
Oh, okay. Um, so let's introduce everybody to Nate Shepherd.
Okay.
He had a little bit of a past thing going on in book 1, and And I really liked that about him. So he had been sort of off the grid for a little while, and he got drawn into this case.
That's exactly right.
So, yeah.
That's exactly right. He had a personal tragedy about, 18 months before the book starts, and he's finally coming out of it. And his life is different. He's started out on his own. He's in his mid-30s. He's started a new practice, and he gets drawn into this big case, and the people around him are concerned that it's a little too close to home for him, but he thinks he's past everything. And so it goes forward then with trying this case.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about the case.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So this is by far the most gruesome book that I've written. Okay, my other books are not this gruesome and don't have this profanity in them.
Good to know, because there was a
but,
few pages that I just had to skip.
Yeah, and that's kind of the premise of this. The premise of this whole thing is that the defendant finds a friend of his in peril, that she's either going to be hurt severely or killed. And he does what we all would like to think we would do, which is protect that person. But he does it in such a horrific, gruesome, brutal way that the average person is going to really have trouble getting past that.
Right.
And so that's the conflict.
And he's a big guy.
And he's a big guy, and he's brutal in a way, and is unapologetic for what he's done. And so that's the tension that's the point of that particular book is, can Nate get the jury past the brutality of what people might think is necessary, but might not. So
right, because it was in my opinion, completely over the top. He could have killed the guy. He could have killed the guy 12 times, probably.
For sure, for sure. And that's the hard thing, is he's doing something we'd like to think would do, but everyone would probably think he should have stopped at some point.
Yes.
So yeah, my other books are not that gruesome, but that just happened to be the way this one fell.
Yeah, good to know. It makes me want to read them even more.
Okay.
It was a really intense read. So you're independently published, and by the number of reviews that you have, especially just for the first book, it seems like you're doing a really good job at what you're doing.
Oh, thanks.
Did you ever consider getting an agent or doing the traditional publishing route?
I didn't at the beginning of this. Part of it, I had written here and there, but I wasn't trying to make it as a writer in the 90s and early 2000s. I wrote a couple books then, but more just to know you could write one. You know what I mean? And I started getting serious about it in 2010, right in that area, as my kids were getting a little older. And at the time, though, I was still practicing. I was full-time. Our life was pretty busy, my family. And I quite honestly didn't have the mindset to write people, wait a year to hear if an agent would even be interested in seeing a next draft of it. If I was fortunate enough to be successful, wait another year to get it published. And around that time was when the self-publishing industry was really the technology started to be there where you could do this. And my thought was to try and fail faster. If it wasn't going to work, let's do it and let's see what works and what doesn't, and get some stuff out. And I was fortunate enough to be with a couple other folks who were doing a similar thing. And so we could share what was working and what wasn't working, and sort of figure it out together.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. As I remember when I first started writing, the independently published authors were sort of, not vilified, but, not looked real well upon,
Yeah, and there's still
that
some
stigma.
of that.
Yeah.
For sure. I think there's still some of that depending on the crowd you're in, for sure. But the big thing is being able to get it out. If you can get it out and find an audience, you have some flexibility there. And so
Right.
that at the time I was in my life, this seemed like the way to go. And honestly, like in the 90s and 2000s, this wasn't an option.
Right.
Then it was strictly a vanity press. or things like that, or you've got a garage full of books. But with the changes of technology, with the Kindle, with print on demand and things like that, I think it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, for sure. The whole publishing game has changed so much just in the last 10 years.
It really has.
Yeah.
It has.
And so do you use any like publishing tools like Draft to Digital, or do you go strictly just on Amazon or?
Yeah, I don't use any of the services that put books out to multiple platforms for you. I'm not wide. I am at KU, or at Amazon. So I publish the ebooks on Amazon. They're available in KU, which means the ebooks are exclusive there. I print on demand with Amazon. And then I have a publisher, Podium, who specializes in a lot of indie authors, does the audiobooks. I just want to say I got totally lucky, and the narrator for my book is George Newbern, who was in Father of the Bride and has narrated books like Seabiscuit and The Mountain Between Us. He's fantastic. So they've done a great job. So that's the way I get them out there. So I don't use a service that puts them out for you. I know some folks do when they're wide, just because it makes it a little easier.
Right. Well, and I think you and I are both like in genres that sell very well on Amazon, because I do romantic suspense and,
Sure.
legal thrillers. I suspect also people just type it in and,
Yeah.
get it delivered instantly.
And there's a lot of there's people who read a lot of books, and you're in romantic suspense and legal and thrillers in general. And so you see subscribers there, because they can get books more affordably by subscribing.
Right. And they read it like eating candy out of a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great too for series writers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
And as far as tools go, one of the best tools for me is Vellum. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then as far as a self-publishing tool that I use, that's the one that enables you to format the book in a snap. When I first started, I can't remember if it wasn't out yet or if I didn't have a Mac, but either way, I was doing the whole managing the Word document itself, and that's not the same. It makes it so much easier now.
Right.
That's probably the biggest self-publishing tool that I use.
Yeah, that's good advice for people with Apple computers.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And see, and I'm on a PC. So
okay.
I know all about it from my Mac friends, but
well, and that was when I went from practicing full-time. It's been about a year and a half since I went full-time writing, and I had to update the computer system here at home. And I was a Microsoft user, a PC user my whole career, and I wound up getting a Mac when I went on my own for just that reason, so that I'd have the Vellum.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that they've released a version now that is for PC, if I'm not mistaken.
Have they now?
Yeah, I believe they have. So,
okay.
and I might write that into the notes in when I post this on YouTube.
Okay.
So I'll put that link up there for anybody who's interested.
Super helpful.
Yeah. So like the crazy thing now I think about Amazon is there's been recent articles, I think just this week, about famous authors and, writing gurus having their stuff or having their name stolen and having books published by AI up on Amazon. And, do you think that Amazon will ever get control of that situation? It makes it kind of scary to really want to be, publishing strictly on Amazon. Do you think they'll ever get control of that situation, or do indie authors need to go wider?
Certainly anything you can do to get yourself in as many markets as possible and diversify as much as possible is always a good idea. I think they'll all have trouble at some point because you can self-publish to Barnes and Noble and Apple and everywhere else too. So that's the vehicle isn't going to, whether it's Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Apple, isn't going to stop AI from putting books on it, because they can get them there. I think the real gaming we're seeing is the page reads, right, where they're putting up an AI book and then they have a troll farm that is reading the pages, to get more of their share of the pot. So sure,
Good.
I definitely think diversifying where you're published and how helps. And talking to some of the other folks I work with, it makes it more important than ever to have sort of a personal author footprint, your page, your media, your things, so that people know it's you, and it makes it harder to, there's plenty of, well, you and I both have published under pen names. We know there's
Right.
reasons to do a pen name. And there's reasons to do them without a picture, which, by the way, I did for the first 2.5 years as Michael Stagg, because I was practicing and wanted to keep them separate. But that makes it a little easier for AI to be you if there's no pictures of you and other media of you.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Right.
but certainly, the hope is that, like there's talking about, there's software out there now to check when kids are plagiarizing papers before the AI explosion. Hopefully the technology on the other end will keep up.
Right.
The scammers always be a little bit ahead, but hopefully they'll keep up and make it harder.
Well, I heard ITW put out a interview about AI, and there was I don't remember what it's called or anything at this point. But the lawyers that were talking to the audience said that it's really important to have your work copyrighted and everything, first of all. But the other thing is, like, the places like Amazon and those big publishers, they are using the best AI technology that they have to scan the stuff that gets published, and you don't, just to make sure that it's not like a reprint or a copy of something else.
Mhm.
So I think the people now that are using the AI to publish under somebody's name, somebody's famous name, they're, the stuff, what they're putting in the books on the page is just gobbledygook.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I
So
know there's even there's one independently based cover artist, a fairly big cover art company that puts it out, but that has started a program to certify that your book is not created with AI, and they incorporate that into the cover. So I know some folks are taking that approach, but I think it's here for all of us. I mean, that's what the writers' strike, that's one of the biggest issues in the writers' strike. I think Disney
yeah.
announced last week that they have an AI group that they've put together to see how it can be used in their properties. So, I mean, we're all going to confront it. We're all
Yeah,
going to.
I know. I think it's here.
Yeah.
So moving on from that. So let's see. What, I kind of know what it takes to be really successful at independent publishing, and I am not there. It's a lot of work. You're the author, you're the marketer, you're the publisher, you're taking on all these different, wearing all these different hats. So how do you, as an indie author, how do you spend your time thoughtfully?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And you know how it is too. It varies from day to day depending on what kind of deadlines you're on. But
Yeah.
There's only so much writing a day you can do unless you're under the end of a deadline. So for me, I tend to write in the morning. I tend to then do whatever sort of business or marketing work needs to be done in the afternoon. And then, kind of as a carryover from the days when I was practicing, I would write at night after dinner and walking the dog. And so I still spend a couple hours at night, because that also then helps get ready for the next day. So as far as the daily schedule, that's kind of how I do it. But you're right. I think it's really important to know what works and what doesn't for you, and to spend your time on the stuff that's going to move the needle, so, and I'm not talking about things when you have a personal commitment, your local library would like you to talk or whatever. But if you're doing something that's going to take you out of commission for a day or two, you got to really think hard about whether it's worth it and whether it's going to move the needle for you, with your sales or your career, what you're trying to do. And I think you have to pick what you enjoy and what you're good at. So, for example, when you talk about marketing, there are so many ways to be successful doing that. Some people, I know people who are successful on TikTok, who love Instagram, who love Facebook. I'm not as good with those. I'm on them, but I'm not on it as much. I tended to focus on advertising. That's something I could figure out and get behind. And so a lot of my marketing time was spent on ads, and doing that. But there is no one way to do it. There are, there's some folks at the top of the overall stores right now that have nailed either TikTok or their social media community that do a great job. And so I think it is figuring out what works for you and for your audience. Where's your audience at?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's great advice. And like you said, there is no one way to do it. I think everybody that I've ever spoken to is managing things just a little bit differently,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So tell us a little bit about your process, your writing process.
Sure.
How do you get the details right?
When I'm getting ready to go, for a couple of weeks, it always seems like for me, you kind of figure out in general where the crime is going, but to make it work, you need sort of a second thing that's interweaving in it. And so I'll spend a week or two going down rabbit holes. I'll have germs of ideas, and you go different places trying to figure it out. And then once you have sort of a general thought process, that's where the research we were talking about comes in, whether it's some medical research I might have to do for if it's a murder, the way someone's been killed, or evidence that's in it. There'll usually be some legal, but most people don't want a lot of detail in the legal. It's more research to make sure you don't screw things up, as far as the plot goes. But that's a lot like what I did before. You'd go in and just see, all right, what law would govern this or that, and make sure you don't run afoul of it. And then I'm sort of in the middle. I'm not a total pantser, and I don't outline the whole thing. I wind up with a page or two of bullet points and get rolling from there. And then, as it's going, I'm one that I will dive into something real quick while I'm writing to make sure I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah.
As far as daily process, the writing process itself has been different depending on where I was in my career. I've done a lot of different things, but as far as physically how I do it, but most recently I've been probably the last year and a half dictating the first draft, but with Dragon Anywhere software, so I can see it as it's happening, and as opposed to it just being out there. So I can see it, and then I pull it over that night into the transcript and clean it up into the Word document. And it's not that much faster, but I find it's a lot less mentally taxing, really, to do it that way for me. And then just kind of clean it up and go from there.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard good things about that Dragon software.
Yeah, I use the one on the phone because they had it geared. I actually found it was geared for doctors and stuff, so you can program the words into it. And so with I did some early writing in fantasy, so you're making up all sorts of ridiculous names, that go in it. And so I needed something that would let me put the names in there, and that was how I found it, actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's awesome.
So that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, cool. What advice can you give authors, new authors?
Yeah. With indies in particular, there's a bunch of big resources out there, there's Mark Dawson has a course and a podcast, free podcast, and a pay for course. Joanna Penn has a podcast. People have done a lot of the work for how to build the infrastructure before you do it. For me, some of the things that really helped by the time I got to Nate Shepard, crystallize it, was to the extent you can pick, the sharper the genre is that you pick, the better off you are. So for me, for example, I wrote some fantasy books, too broad, not clearly delineated. There's a ton of categories within it. I didn't know where I was. Legal thriller is a sharp category. It's easy to know who to market to. You know who's buying that book. And whether that's a cozy mystery or a police procedural or, whatever it is, I think the more delineated that is, the easier it is. The one thing I tell people that they kind of look at me funny is when you're doing a new pen name or a new series, don't tell your friends and family. Don't let them know about it. Don't tell them to buy it. And the reason for me is this is what's worked for me is if my mom goes and buys the book, they know she reads gardening books. If my friend goes and reads the books, it's sports books. Amazon or Barnes and Noble doesn't know who to recommend your book to. So before I launch a pen name or a book, I spend all my time marketing to whether that's social media, whether that's advertising, to people who read that kind of book. I want to only market. So when I'm starting with legal thrillers, I want to only advertise and market my pre-order to people who read legal thrillers, because then Barnes and Noble or Amazon or whoever knows, oh, I should recommend this book to people who read legal thrillers. Whereas if you tell all your friends and family first, it has no idea what to do with it. You know, you've got so many interests. They're buying the book because of you, you know.
It messes up the algorithm.
Yeah, yeah. So then once it's established, once it's gone on for a month or two or whatever, you tell everyone, hey, I've got this new book or I've got this new pen name or whatever. And I've seen that not just with me, with some other folks where they were writing in a different genre and they decide to switch. So they have, you know, that pen name and they market to that particular group of people to try and make that as clean as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we sort of talked about this a little bit, kind of pick your marketing poison. Whatever works for you is the thing you should do. You know, for me, that's ads more than anything else. I have a little bit of social media, but other people can just, they can put TikToks up or they can do Instagram posts and it looks fantastic and it works. You look like you're giving me a look. It looks like you were thinking on the friends and family thing. Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that because I mean, it does make sense. I mean, you know, your friend, the garden book reader, is gonna, you know, go and buy your book. And then, I mean, I guess I didn't really realize that, you know, that they would change that it confuses the system.
Well, and you know, I'm not in there. I don't know exactly how all of it works, but if you
Nobody
think about,
knows how it works.
yeah, about what all our friends and family read,
Right.
they all read different things.
Right.
So that if a bunch of people are coming who all read different things, let's put it this way, it can't help.
Yeah.
Whereas if everyone who has gone to your romantic suspense book also has bought 4 other romantic suspense authors, they know, oh, okay, this is one of those people that fits in with these other 4 or 5 authors. Those books all make sense together. And then once it's established, then I don't think that matters at all.
Right.
You know, but just as you're getting going, when you talk about a beginning author, the more you have a sharply defined category and the more you have, you curate the audience at the beginning, or just really push to the people who buy your kind of book.
Right.
It's helpful. And I think, by the way, I'm not traditionally published. I'm sure they're totally different. They have a different strategy.
Yeah.
That's just, if you're starting out on your own independently, that seems like a way to go.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's really great advice. Thanks.
You bet.
Yeah. Who is your inspiration? Who is your favorite author?
That is so hard. Everyone probably says that, right? But I was thinking about it. I grew up reading a lot of fantasy and science fiction. And so the two, when you talk about inspiration to me, there's a guy, Stephen Brust, wrote this Vlad Taltos series that started back in the 80s and is still going today. They're one-offs. It's about 17 books. And Jim Butcher wrote the Dresden Files, same thing. That's urban fantasy, but both of them, I enjoy both their books. But as far as inspiration goes, those guys have done it for years with character where it's a dedicated case or thing. You get their mystery or adventure of the thing they're on, but you're riveted by the recurring characters and the recurring enemies that happen over the course of the series, even though every single thing is a one-off adventure. And so since that's kind of, and of course the ultimate at that is Lee Child with Jack Reacher. I mean, that just goes without saying. But they kind of show how that's possible, which in some ways is what I'm trying to do with Nate. Is each book is a one-off case, but what people like to come back to hopefully is the main characters and his relationships with his family and his friends. And for example, Olivia and Cade are recurring characters, his family members are recurring characters, and
right.
So
then,
those,
just to touch on that a little bit, how big of an arc does he have? Is he aging over all of these books? Are you trying to keep him, you know, around the same age for all of them?
I'm in the middle of the road on that, but I am keeping track of age because I screwed up and I introduced young nieces and nephews. So I can't have them. Each case takes X amount of time, you know. So I did have to bite the bullet and sit down and do a timeline. So he is aging, time is progressing. But there isn't an overall character arc that, you know, at some point this is what's going to happen to end the series for him personally. But as long as people want to read him, I'll keep writing cases, and his life is changing as anybody's does as it goes.
Right.
Each book you kind of get a deeper relationship. You find out more about his relationship with one of the other recurring characters, like Cade and Olivia in the third book, or his older brother Tom in the fourth book. And so you kind of pull people through like that a little bit.
Well, I think they have to age a little bit. I mean, you think about even Sue Grafton's, you know, Kinsey Malone, you know, 26 books.
Right.
You know? So they have to, I think, evolve a little bit. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so yes, so he's evolving that way. I am keeping track of time, unfortunately. So now I have a whole nother spreadsheet I got to keep track of. I did at one point. I had to go down and look and say, oh, okay, Justin's in the 7th grade now. Okay, I can't have him do that.
Oh, wow. Well, this has been really great. Can you let readers know where to find you? And we know your books are on Amazon.
Sure, books are on Amazon. You can find me at michaelstagg.com on the web. There is a newsletter that I put out probably once or twice a month. Trying to at least get once a month, but when things are going on, it'll come out a little more frequently. And then I'm on Facebook as Michael Stagg. I don't post on there a lot. I am on Instagram as the Michael Stagg, only because Michael Stagg was taken. So the Michael Stagg for that, and I'll post occasionally with links to things there too. Great. But the website and the newsletter is probably your best bet.
All right, great. Thank you so much. It was really great talking to you today.
Trace, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.